Cody, that was awesome, dude.
Yeah. So listen, man, I could talk about this stuff this is what I love, right? So yeah, no, I mean, I had a conversation the other day on Tuesday night with a professional development coach who was in Malaysia. It's supposed to be like a little 10-minute talk on mental health. We talked for an hour and 15 minutes. And most of it was him just sitting there, and he would ask me a question and I would go, and he'd be like, well, what about this? And I would go, well, what about this? And I'm like, I was like, sorry, you can talk. Like, you can interrupt me, please. He's like, no, 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 no.
Yeah, it was. I just love everything about where you're at now in your life is completely about because like I said earlier, when I hear people go, yeah, we're all about culture building, and I'm like, well, you can't just say it, you got to walk the walk. But everything from meeting the administration there at Midland to dealing with your not with your parent, but with your own kids, to recruits, to dealing with everything. And I never heard a coach talk about the maid of honor thing like that. In my head, I was like, oh, this is an automatic clip. Like, that's when I think about it, I'm like, holy cow, that is so freaking cool. Because
Yeah, the problem is someone else is going to use it now, though.
That's
and
true.
it's not. But what my fear is, it's not going to be genuine.
Yeah, true.
Like
True.
I love to share. Like, I have, like, I'll show you. So this is like obviously Ted Lasso, right? So this is every session I've run here, right? And I will put these out and I will share them all day long and help any way I can, because that won't hurt anybody's mental, spiritual, emotional health, right? A coach that brings a kid in under that guise and then doesn't truly believe it, like, that's the only thing that I'm like,
True.
ooh, please be genuine with it. But I also think that when someone says it, like, you feel if they're genuine with it or not,
Mm-hmm.
or at least I hope. And that's where, honestly, like, I get worried with this generation because they don't have conflict, they don't have the face-to-face eye contact conversations. That do they lose that ability to have genuine conversations? Like, we deal with it. Like, we'll have a classroom session later on today and we'll talk soccer stuff, but we also, every time we talk life. So whether that be conflict resolution, whether that be how to evaluate relationships in your life and how to rank them and level of importance to how they affect you, like, all these different things we touch on weekly.
The other thing that resonated with me is I just got off a chat with Rob Breton, who's at Nebraska Kearney,
Yep.
and his comment too was the people here in Nebraska are so stinking nice. That was his comment.
Yeah.
And then when you started talking about it, I'm like, holy moly, maybe I need to move states and go to Nebraska.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just like that whole, the Midwest people are kind, Southern people are, very hospitable. Like, there's a reason that's there. It's because the majority are, right? Like, obviously you always have your outliers, but the majority are. And so it's nice to be around, honestly. Like, my California girls come out and they're like, people are so kind. They're so nice. And I'm like, because that's the way it should be.
Yeah. That's kind of sad almost in a way that they're
I
like, wait a
know.
minute, this is what it could be like. I'm not like,
Yeah, I
back at home.
look, I say it all the time. Like, my goal, my ultimate goal, honestly, which I will never reach, but I will always shoot for, is to be the best coach the US has ever produced.
Hmm.
Right? Very lofty goal. I will shoot for that all day long because even if I fail, I'm really high up there, right? But I will have people say, like, "Oh, like, you're a great coach," or you do this great, or you do that great, or the bridesmaid comments, like, "Oh, I've never," people look at it that way, and I'm like, or I'll have people like, "Oh, I've never met a coach like you," and that's like, I'm so sad when I hear that comment. Like, I've never met a coach like you. Like, I'm sorry, I should not be the outlier. There's nothing about me that should say that I'm different. Like, I should be a general coach. Like, that's how I feel. Like, I feel like I should be like, yeah, he's good. Not like, oh, he's great, or he does this better than anybody. Because there's nothing about my life that I do better than anybody. And so that's, like, for me, when people are like, oh, you're a good coach. Like, the conversation I had on Tuesday night, we were talking about we're talking about relationships, because he's like, how do you build relationships? This may be the part that where you're like, I wish I would have had this. And so I was like, you've got to build relationships. You've got to build connection 3 ways. Like, humans learn 3 ways: auditory, visual, kinetic. You create relationships 3 ways: auditory, visual, kinetic. The fact is when you coach a female athlete, they automatically see themselves here and not here. And I don't know why. It's drives me insane, but they put themselves here naturally. And I can't. It frustrates. But so if I walk by and I say, hey, great job, and they're walking with a friend, they will automatically think I'm talking to their teammate. If I say, so for me to build connection, I've got to walk by, put my hands like on their shoulder very lightly, because you got to be careful on how you do things, but very lightly, or even back of my hand on the side of her arm, just to be like, I'm talking to you, connection, and be like, great job today. And look at her and tell her, so she has connection, or she has kinetic, she has visual, and she has auditory. And that ties it in, right? And I think that's why, like, the greatest compliment I've ever been given is people say that I'm genuine, right? I think that's why people think I'm genuine, because when I talk to someone, a lot of times there is those, I try to connect through those 3 ways. I don't just leave it to one.
That's awesome. That was awesome. I love it. The other thing too, like you said, is how you coach. That should be the standard, not the like the outlier. That should be expected. Like, wait a minute, you weren't getting that stuff when you were in club. You weren't getting the same experience in high school. Like that's what. And it's interesting too, because I'm going back to, I just had Mary Whistler, who's up at Purdue Northwestern or Northwest.
Yeah, I listened to it this
Yeah,
weekend.
and I just put a clip out. It was in this same spot we're in, and she said there's a lot of coaches that 100% ruin their players. They run them out. They don't enjoy it, and that's something. And so she's like, we've got to do a better job of supporting our players, not just as. And I love the fact you talked about, like, in the classroom today, we're going to talk about how we're going to do, like, whatever our tactics are, but we're also going to say, like, look, we've got spring's a long time. Spring break's coming up. All these, like, you're going to start talking about life things. Like, yeah, it's cool to talk about soccer, but in the big scheme of things, and you talked about it earlier, when I think back even to my old playing days, I can't remember dilly squat about a score, or I know we played in a certain, like, a league game, and we could have won and all that. I know we put some banners up on the wall, but you don't really remember all the specifics. But I do remember dudes that I played with, like you talked about, that I still follow, we on Facebook and all that kind of stuff. So I loved it. It was a lot of resonated. The other thing that I love is, well, I find it every time, is every coach's journey is completely unique to them. And I think it's so cool to see yours, where you didn't have to go play D1 or try to go semi-pro or do whatever. It was really just relationships. Like, you connected with Michelle, and then you went from there, and you just kept in all the club stuff and connecting with the guy that came and helped with the high school. Like, it's all relationships, just building and building. Like, it's just, and now here you are, like, sending it forward. It's awesome.
Yeah, I think, like, so to your conversation with Mary, like I said, I'm very proud to be a women's coach, and I think that kind of gets missed. So for me, there's women's coaches, and then there's men's coaches coaching on the women's side. And so if you don't understand, like, for me, I think one of the biggest areas on the women's side that we can do better at is, a lot of times you get coaches. So the old method of tear them down to build them back up. On the men's side, that works, because egos are there, and you tell them they're not that good, they'll still be there. Right? Like, so to get them to kind of, like, they just naturally build themselves up that way. On the women's side, you do not need to tear them down, because, like I said, they already see themselves here. And so what happens, and I think of a lot of what you see with, whether it be the NWSL probe, or you see with different coaches or different allegations and stuff like that, is they still have that mentality of, or whether they were taught that way, so that's what they think, or they believe that that's how you have to build someone up. is they tear them down. But if they're already here, you can't tear them down. You tear them down anymore, like you're causing serious harm. And then you try to build them back up. But again, they care that you care about them. And so if you tear them down, you've lost that. You're not going to be able to build them up. Right. And so my first year was that. My first year was establishing the culture, but that's what a lot of it was let me build you back up because you were completely torn down, whether it be coach before me, club coaches before him, high school coaches before them, like just in the dumps, and like super talented players, like such good players. And I'm like, y'all are really top end players. I was shocked at, honestly, how good of a team I was inheriting. The mental side of it, the emotional stability side of it was in the dumps. And it wasn't because they didn't have the strength or they had just been torn to shreds. And so that mentality of, and that's why, like, again, I love being a women's coach because I see it with my daughter. I see it with the again, this is year 22 for me, right? So I've seen it to where they just get torn, and I'm like, stop, please stop. Don't scream at them. Don't run them after a game that they lose. Don't run them. I don't care if they didn't play well. Don't run them. And so, like, I literally have a conversation with one of my former players who's coaching high school in Texas, and she's like, "Oh, we lost and they ran sprints out." And I'm like, "Why? Why? You have like 2 true soccer kids on your team, and they played a team full of soccer kids. Like, of course they're going to lose in high school. Like, why are you running it? Because that doesn't help them. You getting upset with them doesn't help them. Like, that's not your role. Like, you got to be there for them, support them, make them better than they think they can be. Like, on the women's side, I think that's the true marker, the true, way that you develop is show them true, because they don't actually see themselves that way. And again, that's another one of those, that's sad. I hate that, but that's just also the reality. And I would say that's not my opinion, because that's 22 years of experience that I've seen year in, year out, like, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if they have social media or not. It just doesn't.
Well, that kind of goes back to when you said that especially when you got that letter back from one of your previous players, and how you read that and how your why has changed. I think that's something that speaks volumes for you, that ability to be self-aware and be like, all right, I've got to change kind of the way I focus on the game and what I want my program to be producing. Like you were talking about, this is beyond these 4 years. I want to produce things so I know when I see you 10 years down the road, you're doing amazing things. You're a great mom, great wife, great teacher, whatever it is that you end up doing. And I thought it was cool that you were like, I went in and I thought this is my why. And then I kind of realized, and it had to morph a little bit. And now you're at the spot that you're at. Like, I think more coaches need to be able to say, all right, this isn't working, or maybe I need to change some things up to see, bigger successes.
Yeah.
So
no, I think it always changes. I think it should change. If your why is the same as it was 10 years ago, it's probably a youth thing, because there's probably not much about you that's the same as 10 years ago. Your diet's probably not the same. Your waistline's probably not the same. My hairline was not the same. Like,
I got the beanie on.
Yeah. Like, I didn't have a glare coming off my head 10 years ago.
Cody, man, I have really appreciated this. I appreciate you taking the time I know you've got like a pretty busy schedule for this evening and all that kind of stuff, but I appreciate it. There's going to be tons of great takeaways from what you shared, and I appreciate you being, open and willing to chat and all those good things. So,
yeah, man, if you ever want to do a follow up or anything else, like, more than happy to.
All right.
So,
sounds awesome, man. Hey, good
like
luck.
I love this. I love this. This is fun.
Oh, good. Well, good luck this spring, and I'm excited. I'm going to watch, see how you all do next in year 3, because then I think you're for sure going to be hitting the ground running next year. So,
Yeah, it's shaping up to be pretty good. I got a few more commits just to final in, but even if we had to stop today, we're in a pretty good place. We're in a pretty strong place.
That's awesome. Good for you, man.
Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Yep. No worries.
All
Take
right,
care.
have a good one.